You think your grandmother's kitchen was just full of dusty old junk? Think again. These mid-century American kitchens house some of the most ingenious, purpose-built, and surprisingly efficient tools ever designed for home cooking. They're real tools that powered real family meals across America from the 1920s through the 1970s. Let's dig into 25 clever kitchen tools you never knew were actually engineering marvels hiding in plain sight. Wooden butter churn. Before grocery store butter came wrapped in waxed paper, the wooden butter churn ruled farm kitchens. This waist-high oak barrel with a dasher plunger was childhood torture and economic necessity rolled into one backbreaking tool. You'd pour fresh cream into the churn, then work that wooden dasher up and down for 20 to 60 minutes. Push through thick cream, pull up, push down, feeling resistance increase as butterfat molecules clump together. Grandmother would say, keep churning until you heard the break, that distinct sound when butter separated from buttermilk. During the 1920s and 30s, butter churning meant survival. Farm wives sold excess butter at market for a crucial household income. A good churn processed 5 to 10 pounds per batch. The buttermilk became pancake batter or pig feed, nothing wasted. The butter emerged pale yellow in summer, nearly white in winter, tasting of whatever wildflowers grew in the pasture. Every farm's butter had signature flavor. That wooden churn represented food security and family income. Hand crank meat grinder, cast iron. Bolted to the kitchen table edge, the hand crank meat grinder was built like a tank. These heavy-duty grinders by Universal and Griswold, produced from the 1890s through 1960s, turned tough meat cuts into hamburger and sausage filling. You'd cut meat into chunks, feed them into the top hopper, then crank clockwise. Inside, a screw auger pushed meat toward a rotating blade pressed against a perforated die plate. Meat extruded through holes in neat strands. The mechanism processed sinew and gristle that would jam modern electric grinders. During Depression and war rationing, these grinders were survival tools. The grinder transformed tough shoulder roasts and scraps into palatable meals. Grandmother would grind pork with fatback, mix in sage and pepper, stuff it into casings, homemade breakfast sausage costing pennies per pound. The 8 to 12-pound cast iron weight provided stability. The hand crank gave complete control over speed and texture. Today's antique shops price these at $50 to $150. Chrome bread box. That curved chrome bread box wasn't just storage. It was engineered food science disguised as kitchen decor. These Art Deco beauties, popular from the 1930s through 1960s, kept bread fresh for days using physics and smart design. Heavy-gauge steel stamped into a roll-top design, chrome-plated for corrosion resistance, with ventilation holes strategically placed to balance moisture and airflow. The curved shape maximized internal volume while minimizing counter space. The roll-top lid slid smoothly on tracks, requiring just one hand. Inside that sealed chrome chamber, delicate environmental balance occurred. Bread released moisture as it aged, but ventilation holes allowed just enough air exchange to prevent mold while retaining humidity to keep crust from going rock hard. In an era before preservatives, this mattered enormously. Grandmother baked bread twice weekly or bought fresh loaves containing just flour, water, yeast, and salt. Without artificial extenders, bread had maybe 3 days before going stale. The chrome bread box extended freshness to 5 or 6 days. Potato ricer. This hinged metal contraption looked like a medieval torture device, but it transformed boiled potatoes into the fluffiest mashed potatoes you've ever tasted. The potato ricer consisted of a perforated metal basket with a plunger that pressed cooked potatoes through tiny holes. You'd drop a hot-boiled potato into the basket, squeeze the handles together like giant scissors, and watch as perfectly riced potato strands extruded through the holes in delicate threads. Unlike mashing or using a mixer, ricing never overworked the starches. Overmixed potatoes become gluey, the result of ruptured starch cells releasing sticky amylose. The ricer cut cleanly through potato flesh, maintaining cellular structure while creating light, airy texture. Professional chefs still swear by ricers for premium mashed potatoes. The technique incorporates air between those extruded strands, creating fluffiness impossible to achieve with a masher. Grandmother would rice her potatoes directly into a warm bowl, fold in butter and cream gently, and serve clouds of potato perfection. Nutmeg Grater. Before pre-ground spices came in little glass jars, the nutmeg grater was grandmother's secret weapon for elevating everything from eggnog to custard pies. This small metal grater, often tin or stainless steel, featured fine rasps designed specifically for the hard aromatic nutmeg seed. Whole nutmeg was kitchen currency. A single seed cost pennies and lasted months, while pre-ground nutmeg lost its volatile oils within weeks. Grandmother kept whole nutmegs in a jar, pulling one out when recipes called for that warm, slightly sweet spice. She'd rake the seed across the grater's fine teeth, releasing intensely fragrant oils that filled the kitchen with Christmas morning aroma even in July. The difference between fresh grated and pre-ground nutmeg is dramatic. Fresh nutmeg has bright, complex flavor, slightly peppery, warm with hints of pine and sweetness. Pre-ground tastes flat and dusty by comparison. Many nutmeg graters featured small storage compartments built into the handle, a tiny hinged door that held whole nutmegs. Crock-Pot/rival Beanery, early slow cooker. When the rival Crock-Pot hit American kitchens in 1971, it revolutionized how working mothers approached dinner. This avocado green or harvest gold countertop appliance featured a ceramic insert surrounded by heating elements that cooked food at low, steady temperatures for hours. The genius was simple: throw in tough meat cuts, vegetables, and liquid in the morning, set the dial to low, and return home 8 hours later to a fully cooked meal. The ceramic crock distributed heat evenly, preventing hot spots. The tight-fitting glass lid trapped moisture, creating self-basting environment where cheap chuck roast became fork tender. For 1970s families with both parents working, the Crock-Pot was liberation technology. No more rushed dinners or expensive convenience foods. The low heat, around 200 degrees Fahrenheit on low, meant you couldn't overcook most dishes. The appliance became synonymous with church potlucks. Everyone had signature Crock-Pot recipes: Mississippi pot roast, Swedish meatballs, and grape jelly sauce. Today's Instant Pots promise faster results, but they'll never replicate that specific Crock-Pot flavor. Hoosier Cabinet. Walk into any 1920s or 30s kitchen and you'd find the Hoosier Cabinet, a freestanding oak workstation that functioned as the entire kitchen's organizational command center. This 6-foot-tall cabinet featured a porcelain work surface, flour bin, spice rack, bread drawer, glassware storage, and dozens of compartments designed around specific cooking tasks. The Hoosier Manufacturing Company of Indiana revolutionized kitchen efficiency by applying assembly line thinking to home cooking. The pull-out porcelain work surface sat at perfect height for rolling dough. Above it, a flour bin with built-in sifter let you measure and sift with one hand while mixing with the other. Spice jars slid into dedicated slots. A sugar bin dispensed through a bottom door. Before built-in kitchen cabinets became standard, the Hoosier consolidated everything into one efficient workstation. Solid oak construction, tambour doors that rolled up instead of swinging out, porcelain surfaces that resisted stains and wiped clean easily. During the Depression, Hoosier cabinets represented significant investment. Today, restored Hoosiers fetch $800 to $3,000. Milk bottle opener. Before milk came in cartons and plastic jugs, it arrived at your door in glass bottles sealed with paper caps crimped over cardboard discs. The milk bottle opener, a simple pointed metal lever, often shaped like a church key, became essential morning equipment. These openers were dead simple: a pointed tip that punched under the cap's crimped edge, and a leverage point that pried the cap off with one quick flick. Dairy companies gave them away as promotional items, stamped with the dairy's name and phone number. Every household had 3 or 4 rattling around kitchen drawers. The morning milk ritual, you'd hear the milkman's truck before dawn, bottles clinking as he left fresh delivery on the porch. You'd bring in the bottles, still cold with condensation, and pop off the cap. In winter, the cream would have frozen and pushed up the cap like a little cream popsicle. The glass bottle system was zero waste before anyone used that term. You'd leave empty bottles on the porch for the milkmen to collect, wash, and refill. Oster Kitchen Helper, multifunction appliance. When Oster introduced the kitchen helper in the 1960s, it promised to replace half a dozen appliances with one versatile machine. This heavy chrome and white countertop unit featured a powerful motor base with attachments that mixed, blended, ground, and sliced, the original food processor concept. The main unit housed a robust 300-watt motor. Different attachments snapped onto a central drive shaft, a mixing bowl with beaters, a blender jar, a meat grinder, a food chopper, even a juicer attachment. The selling point was consolidation. Why buy separate appliances when one machine did everything? Grandmother's kitchen helper lived on her counter, semi-permanently assembled. She'd use the beaters for cake batter, swap to the blender for milkshakes, attach the grinder for making sausage. The machine's 15 to 20-pound weight provided stability. The motor delivered consistent power. The quality was commercial grade, metal gears instead of plastic, sealed bearings that lasted decades, chrome-plated housings. But switching between attachments meant disassembly and washing multiple parts. Jell-O Mold. No mid-century dinner party was complete without a gleaming Jell-O mold, and the specialized aluminum or copper molds that created these wobbly masterpieces were kitchen art supplies. These intricate molds came in shapes ranging from simple rings to elaborate fish, flowers, and architectural designs that turned flavored gelatin into the evening's visual centerpiece. The technique was chemistry and patience. You'd prepare Jell-O according to package directions, often adding canned fruit cocktail, miniature marshmallows, or suspended vegetables in lime gelatin. The mixture poured into an oiled mold went into the refrigerator for hours of setting time. When firm, you'd dip the mold briefly in warm water, loosening the gelatin's grip, then invert it onto a serving plate. If you got the timing right, the molded gelatin released with a satisfying schlorp, standing tall and proud in perfect detail. Get it wrong and your fish mold collapsed into abstract blob. Grandmother had the touch, producing perfect molded salads that guests photographed before serving. The molds themselves were works of craftsmanship. Heavy aluminum or copper conducted cold evenly. Cherry pitter. Every June when cherries came into season, Grandmother pulled out her cherry pitter, a hand-operated gadget that removed pits faster than you could blink. This tool, often cast iron or metal with wooden handles, featured a holder for the cherry and a plunger that pushed the pit through while leaving the fruit mostly intact. The design was elegant in its simplicity. You'd place a cherry in the circular holder, position the stem end up, then press down the spring-loaded plunger. A metal rod pushed straight through the cherry, ejecting the pit out the bottom while the cherry flesh remained in one piece. The best models had collection trays that caught pits separately from fruit. Before the cherry pitter, removing pits meant slicing each cherry with a knife or using your thumbnail. Tedious, messy work that left your hands stained burgundy for days. The pitter transformed this from hour-long drudgery to 15-minute task. You could pit 5 pounds of cherries in the time it took to pit 1 pound by hand. Cherry pie wasn't the only reason. Grandmother made cherry preserves, cherry bounce liqueur, and cherry compote that lasted through winter. Kraut cutter, cabbage slicer. Every fall, when cabbages came in by the bushel, Grandmother pulled out the kraut cutter, a long wooden board with adjustable blades that turned whole cabbage heads into uniform shreds for sauerkraut. This German-American essential, usually handmade from maple or oak, featured 2 or 3 razor-sharp blades set into the board at precise angles. The process was hypnotic and slightly dangerous. You'd place a halved cabbage cut side down on the board, then push it across those fixed blades using a wooden holder that protected your fingers. The blades sliced paper-thin ribbons that fell into a bucket below. Back and forth, until you'd process 20 pounds of cabbage in 30 minutes, work that would take hours with a knife. The Kraut cutter was essential for Eastern European families who put up 50 to 100 pounds of sauerkraut each autumn. Fresh cabbage was cheap in fall, pennies per pound, but wouldn't last through winter without preservation. Sauerkraut provided vitamins and probiotics when fresh vegetables disappeared until spring. The technique required confidence. Push too timidly and the cabbage wouldn't engage the blades. Push too aggressively and you'd lose control. Grandmother had calluses on her palms from years of kraut cutting and could process a bushel of cabbage before lunch. Glass citrus juicer. That ribbed glass cone sitting in grandmother's cupboard wasn't decorative. It was precision engineering for extracting every drop of juice from lemons, oranges, and grapefruits. This Depression-era kitchen essential, usually clear or pale green glass, featured a ream dome surrounded by a collection well with a pouring spout. The design was perfect in its simplicity. You'd cut a citrus fruit in half, press the cut side onto the ribbed cone, then twist and push. The ribs abraded the fruit's flesh while the cone shape extracted juice efficiently. Juice ran down into the collection well while seeds and large pulp pieces remained on top, caught by the cone's design. The pouring spout let you transfer juice directly to measuring cups or glasses. Before electric juicers and refrigerated juice, fresh squeezed citrus was luxury and medicine. Grandmother used lemon juice in everything: lemonade on hot summer days, lemon meringue pie, fish dishes, and as a remedy for sore throats. During winter, fresh orange juice was Christmas morning treat. The glass construction was crucial. Glass didn't absorb citrus oils that would turn rancid, unlike metal juicers that imparted metallic taste. The clear glass let you see exactly how much juice you'd extracted. Hand crank cream whipper. Before electric mixers became standard, the hand crank cream whipper turned liquid cream into fluffy peaks through sheer mechanical advantage. This ingenious device, popular from the 1920s through 1950s, featured a glass jar with a crank-operated beater mechanism in the lid. You'd pour cold, heavy cream into the glass jar, seal the lid with its complex gear assembly, then turn the crank clockwise. Inside, a spinning dasher whipped air into the cream, transforming liquid into soft peaks in 2 to 3 minutes of steady cranking. The glass jar let you watch the transformation. Liquid cream climbing the sides, doubling in volume, turning thick and glossy. Stop too early and you had nothing. Crank too long and you made butter. The advantage over hand whisking was leverage. The geared mechanism multiplied your cranking force, making whipped cream possible without developing tennis elbow. Grandmother could whip a pint of cream for strawberry shortcake in less time than it took to preheat the oven. The glass jar base doubled as serving vessel. Grandmother would whip cream directly in the jar, then bring it to the table with the beater mechanism removed. The sealed jar also meant you could whip cream an hour before dinner and refrigerate it without deflation. Biscuit cutter, fluted. That round metal cylinder with the fluted edge wasn't just for cutting biscuits. It was grandmother's secret to the lightest, flakiest buttermilk biscuits that ever graced a breakfast table. This simple tool, usually tin or stainless steel, featured a sharp fluted edge that cut clean through dough without sealing the edges, allowing maximum rise. The technique mattered as much as the tool. Grandmother would roll biscuit dough to 3/4-inch thickness, flour the cutter's edge, then press straight down through the dough with one firm motion. No twisting. Twisting sealed the edges and prevented rise. Straight down, straight up, producing perfect circles that would split into flaky layers during baking. The fluted edge wasn't decorative. Those scalloped points cut through dough more efficiently than smooth edges, requiring less pressure that could compress the dough. The fluted design also created more edge surface area, producing extra crispy perimeters that contrasted beautifully with tender centers. Biscuit cutters came in sizes from 1.5 to 3 inches. Grandmother preferred 2.5-inch, large enough for proper breakfast biscuits, small enough to manage multiple batches. She'd cut biscuits close together to minimize dough waste, then gather scraps for the dog or one misshapen cook's biscuit she'd eat while the rest baked. Asparagus tongs. Yes, there were specialized tongs just for serving asparagus, and your grandmother owned a pair. These elaborate silver-plated or sterling silver servers, popular from the Victorian era through the 1950s, featured flat, pierced blades designed to cradle delicate asparagus spears without crushing them. The design reflected elaborate table manners when asparagus was luxury vegetable, not farmer's market regular. The flat blades, often 6 inches long, slid under asparagus spears laid parallel on a serving platter. The pierced decorations weren't just ornate, they allowed butter and hollandaise to drain through, preventing sauce puddles on guests' plates. The tong's spring-loaded mechanism provided gentle pressure that held asparagus securely without crushing tender tips. Using asparagus tongs signaled sophistication. The hostess would serve each guest personally, using the tongs to transfer 3 to 5 spears with practiced grace. Grandmother used hers at Easter dinner and other. Hand-crank coffee grinder. Before pre-ground coffee came in vacuum-sealed cans, the hand-crank coffee grinder was essential morning equipment. This wooden box with a metal grinding mechanism and a small drawer, often mounted on the wall or sitting on the counter, transformed whole roasted beans into grounds fresh for each pot. The ritual was meditative. You'd pour whole coffee beans into the hopper at the top, then turn the crank clockwise. Inside burr grinders, 2 metal discs with precise spacing, crushed beans between them rather than chopping. You'd hear the beans crack and smell the sudden release of aromatic oils as grinding exposed fresh coffee surface. After 30 seconds of cranking, you'd open the small drawer at the bottom and find perfectly uniform grounds. The burr mechanism was crucial. Unlike blade grinders that produce inconsistent particle sizes, burr grinders created uniform grounds that extracted evenly during brewing. An adjustable screw let you set coarseness, fine for Turkish coffee, medium for percolators, coarse for cowboy coffee. During World War II rationing, coffee became precious commodity. Grandmother bought whole beans that stayed fresh longer than pre-ground coffee, grinding only what she needed each morning. The wooden box preserved bean freshness better than paper bags. The daily grinding ritual became household routine as constant as winding the clock. Handheld waffle iron, stovetop. Before electric waffle makers, there was the handheld waffle iron, 2 cast iron plates hinged together with long handles that you cooked directly on the stovetop. This tool, dating back to colonial America but popular through the 1950s, required skill, timing, and heat-resistant hands to produce perfect waffles. The process was part cooking, part performance. You'd heat both sides of the iron on the stovetop until water droplets sizzled on contact. Grease the iron's patterned surface, pour in batter, clamp the iron shut, then flip it over on the burner. After 2 minutes, you'd flip it again, cooking the other side. The trick was maintaining consistent heat and flipping at the right intervals. Too hot and the outside burned while the inside stayed raw. Too cool and you got pale, dense waffles. The cast iron construction distributed heat beautifully and developed natural non-stick patina with use. The deep grid pattern created waffles with crispy exteriors and tender centers, with deep pockets perfect for holding butter and syrup. Each waffle took 5 to 7 minutes from pour to plate, making Sunday breakfast an extended family gathering. Different irons produced different patterns, square grids, heart shapes, or decorative designs. Grandmother's had her initials cast into the pattern, marking her waffles as uniquely hers. Flair Stove. The Flair Stove wasn't just an appliance, it was a 1960s space-age statement piece that made your kitchen look like it belonged in the Jetsons. This all-electric range, designed by George Nelson, featured no visible burners or controls, just a smooth glass-ceramic cooktop with glowing red circles that appeared when you turned on the heat. The design was revolutionary. Traditional coil burners sat flush beneath the glass surface, heating through radiant transfer. Touch-sensitive controls responded to finger pressure, decades before smartphones made touch interfaces standard. The oven was self-cleaning using high-heat pyrolytic cleaning that incinerated food residue to ash you could wipe away. The aesthetics were pure mid-century modern: clean lines, minimal ornamentation, and that distinctive white or avocado green finish. The cooktop surface doubled as extra counter space when not in use. The flush design meant no drip pans, no burner grates to clean, no exposed elements that accumulated grease. But the Flair was expensive, $600 to $800 in 1960s dollars when standard stoves cost $200. Only aspirational homemakers with modern sensibilities invested in them. The glass cooktop scratched easily, the touch controls were finicky, and repairs required specialized technicians. Still, owning a Flair meant you'd arrived, living in the future while neighbors cooked on Grandma's old gas range. Electric can opener. When electric can openers hit kitchens in the 1960s, they promised to end the hand-crank drudgery of manual can openers. These countertop or under-cabinet mounted units, often in avocado green or harvest gold, featured a magnetic lifter that held the can while a motorized blade circled the rim. The operation was push-button simple. Position the can under the blade, press the lever to engage the cutting mechanism, and watch as the motor spun the can while the blade sliced through the lid. The magnet held the lid securely, preventing it from falling into the food. In 15 seconds, you had a perfectly opened can with smooth edges. The convenience was undeniable. Grandmother with arthritis could open cans without hand strain. The electric opener also doubled as a knife sharpener. Most models had a sharpening slot in the back where you could restore dull blade edges. Some deluxe models included bottle openers and bag slicers. The downside was counter space. These units were bulky, occupying prime real estate in crowded kitchens. The cutting mechanism required regular cleaning to prevent bacterial buildup from food residue, and when they broke, and they always eventually broke, repair wasn't worth the cost. Today's modern kitchens have largely abandoned them, returning to improved manual openers that work more reliably with less maintenance. Presto Hot Dogger. The Presto Hot Dogger was the most gloriously unnecessary kitchen gadget ever created, and also brilliant. This electric appliance, popular in the 1970s, cooked hot dogs by passing electrical current directly through them, cooking from the inside out in 60 to 90 seconds. The design was simple and slightly terrifying. You'd spear hot dogs on two metal prongs, close the lid, and plug it in. Electricity flowed through the hot dogs themselves, using their moisture and salt content as a conductor. The resistance generated heat, cooking the hot dogs internally while leaving the outside barely warm to touch. No water, no grease, no mess. The hot dogger promised perfect hot dogs every time, evenly cooked, plump, and juicy. It held up to 6 hot dogs at once, making it perfect for families. The cooking was genuinely superior to boiling. No waterlogged skin, no bloated texture. The hot dogs came out firm and flavorful, but the concept was absurd. You needed a dedicated appliance for cooking hot dogs, possibly the easiest food to prepare using traditional methods. It occupied valuable counter space for a task you could accomplish in a pot of boiling water or a skillet. Yet families bought them, used them religiously, and remember them fondly as peak convenience appliance excess. Flour sifter. The flour sifter looked like a metal measuring cup with a trigger handle and a mesh screen, but it was essential for light, tender-baked goods before pre-sifted flour became standard. This simple device, usually tin or stainless steel, featured a rotating mechanism that pushed flour through fine mesh, aerating it and removing lumps. The process was ritual. Grandmother would measure unsifted flour into the sifter's cup, then squeeze the trigger handle rhythmically. Inside, a spring-loaded blade rotated across the mesh screen, forcing flour through while catching any lumps, insects, or debris, real concerns when flour came in paper sacks stored in pantries. The flour fell through in a light, fluffy cloud that incorporated air, increasing volume by up to 25%. This aeration mattered enormously. Flour compacts during storage, packing tightly in bags. Sifted flour measured completely differently than unsifted, affecting recipe accuracy. More importantly, the incorporated air created lighter texture in cakes, biscuits, and pastries. Grandmother knew you could skip sifting for bread or pasta dough, but never for cake flour. The difference between feather-light layers and dense bricks. Many sifters featured triple mesh screens for extra fine results. Some had measuring marks on the side, functioning as measuring cup and sifter in one. The squeeze trigger mechanism lasted decades without maintenance, simple and reliable. When pre-sifted flour became standard in the 1970s, flour sifters slowly disappeared from daily use, though bakers still swear by them for ensuring lump-free, perfectly aerated flour.